1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Stretch to Go podcast. My name is Ian Ray, your host today, and I have a special guest by the name of Brooke McPoyle from Musical Breathwork. Brooke happens to be the founder of Musical Breathwork. She's also a former NCAA Division I golfer for Florida Atlantic University. She's a professionally trained singer, recording artist, and voice coach. She's also the co-founder of a natural health center, Pure Life. She's an artist, muralist, and art teacher with focus on colors and geometry. She's also a researcher in fascia, breath mechanics, brainwave optimization, and somatics. Basically, she is leading the way in her field of fascia and breath work, and it's so intriguing that I brought her onto this podcast because, as you know, with Stretch to Go podcast, we emphasize the importance of fascia and how it plays a critical role in our bodies, in our souls. And this perspective, I believe people can learn more and maybe implement this in their life, and what Brooke has to offer in her perspective of how she got into fascia work. So, Brooke, welcome to the Stretch to Go podcast.
To be here, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, I'm so pleased. We want to dive in, kind of give us a story of how you got into doing fascia work. You were a golfer, you're a singer. But how did fascia come into play?
I have had one of those bodies that has been a little cranky since I was a kid. So my tonsils have been swollen since I was 3. I had a little bit of an issue with my foot when I was born. My right foot was kind of caved in, so I had to wear orthotics. That left me with a hip click that I've had since I could walk. So after playing college athletics, and I was pretty elite in that field, and I can still hit the ball a mile for my size. I'm 5 foot, and I can still hit the ball at 275 now. So I really learned as a golfer the ground force reaction, that ability to create leverage from the upper body to the lower body. And as an athlete, it made me train way more acrobatically than my competition, because some of the women I were playing against were 6 foot tall. They had a swing arc that was 2.5 feet longer than mine. And in order to generate club head speed, I needed to really understand something called ground force reaction. So I got very into the physics of lower body and upper body momentum. I was able to work with, because my dad's a great player, I was able to work with this inventor who really broke down the physics of that for me. But by the time I was 30, I had done pretty extensive damage, training very classically, classic strength training, classic squats, classic sprinting, and the rehabilitation that I was opened up to as a college athlete, even though it was D1 and we had access to a lot more funding and a lot more equipment, it was standard STEM, standard ice and heat, very standard anti-inflammatories, none of which worked. So by the time I was 30, my wrists were super inflamed. My hip was basically degenerated. They were just offering cortisone shots and hey, we'll just do an early hip replacement for you. So as I started to age, I'm 34 now, people just said, oh, this is what it's like when you're an athlete and you get older. And part of me was just very much unwilling to accept that I was going to have an arthritic hip. So I took matters into my own hands after I hurt myself sprinting and I hurt my foot. I had the standard stock plantar fasciitis. I went to my naturopath and he's like, you don't have a foot problem, you have a fascia problem. He gave me a little bit of an introduction on what he would do if he was me. And in about 2 weeks, I had taken in everything that was online. I had ordered every textbook, and I was like, how is it that I have gone this far into professional athletics? And I have literally never heard about training the spring-loaded rubber band content within the body. So when I saw the spiral line, which is that vertical fascia band that double helixes around the body, I realized that is what's generating torque as a golfer. So as I studied the major vertical fascia bands, as I was repairing myself, because I could feel the asymmetry, because golf is so it's one direction. I am swinging 10,000 times this way and 1 time this way. And my brother's got me a left-hand club now, so I can get the warm up the other way. But it made so much sense. Wow, I don't build momentum through my muscles. I'm building momentum momentum through the spring-loaded elasticity of my fascia bands. So it morphed my relationship to the body. And I shortly thereafter found myself a gymnastics coach because the sequence that I had built that just uses a tennis ball had completely restored the flow of my fascia. So instead of, as an artist, right, I deconstruct things. And most people, when they describe the fascia to me, they described it as saran wrap. And as I started studying the cadavers and I got the textbooks, what I started seeing over and over was an overlooked geometric shape. There's a name for it. It's called an icosahedron. And in the icosahedron, you can collapse a structure. Like you can literally fold the shape up and kind of smush it. So if I had one here, I could just, squish up a 22-sided shape and then open it back up, into a flat angle and then into an opening. And when I see the fascia, that's what I see. It is not saran wrap. It is a one piece material that's all connected, right? And so this is a loofah. And this to me is a significantly better concept of how the fascia is braided together and how the body is a circulation system. So we are just bodies of water, right? But depending on how good we're eating and drinking, we add mud and dirt to those bodies of water. So after periods of time, particularly if people don't detox, that debris gets stuck within the particles of the fascia. Now, in most fascia release techniques, when I had a fascia problem, I was like, oh, cool. So who do I go to? Go to a rolfer, $400 for the session. I need to see them for 2 weeks straight, and I'm going to be bruised, damaged, ripped to shreds. I can't train during that time. And none of those felt like okay, even for as an intense experience, okay, when do I have to do this again? There wasn't really like a maintenance of other than just going back to see that therapist over and over and over. So I didn't love the fact that they hunted for densifications only, because the fascia also has slack. Right? So a lot of the fascia release techniques to me are kind of a little obsessed with finding the densifications within the fabric of the fascia and removing them. Often no sequence to it, just manual therapy of digging out what's stuck. And I just felt like that's the most aggressive way for us to handle the fascia. And as I explored different techniques, yin yogas, Coach Chong Z's warm-up technique, Tai Chi techniques, rolfing, myofascia massage, myofascia therapy, structural alignment therapies, as I continued to dip my toe and experience all of these things, there was things that I thought were excellent and things that I thought were totally unnecessary or inefficient. So by combining what worked, I came up with 8 rules. And instead of just applying the 8 rules to any part of the body, I, as a golfer, because of my relationship to the ground up, I started to build some tensegrity units with my uncle. And in the building of it, it was conceptualizing the skeleton on top, all of the tension for the major fascia bands. It's not just, stuck and pulled and adhered. There's really a sequence from it being ground up. I can release the whole spine. If the lower body has asymmetrical tension, you are going to recreate that asymmetry up above because the brain needs balance. I had an opportunity for 3 years. Me and my ex-husband, we opened a natural health clinic down here, and it was based on education. We had a huge community. It was a really cool experience. And in that health center, he was an upper cervical chiropractor, which is really top-down approach. So for 3 years, I educated people about nervous system, how the body heals from inside, looking at the structure of the body from where the skull and the spine meet. There was a small agitation after 3 years of it. And it was like, man, how do we keep people holding the adjustment longer? And people would go in, they'd get adjusted, they would post-rest. We would track them with a thermography machine to make sure that their readings were stabilized. We had way less adjustments than any other office out there. Like, we offered a great product, but still I knew there was more that we could give them so that they could hold, instead of for just 3 months, they could hold for 6, or they could hold for a whole year. And it was the feet. Like, every time they come in, they get adjusted, then they're walking out the door, and I'm seeing them put their high heels back on. Or I'm seeing them smash their toes and then walking on the outside. So it was I really feel like I came into building my sequence because of the combination of golf, because of the combination of running a chiropractic facility for an upper cervical chiropractic facility for 3 years and kind of just turning it upside down. And it works so good for me. When my hip click went away, I knew that I was onto something. I knew that I had restabilized my lower body in a way that I had never successfully done. So it's been a great joy to bring something that's worked for so many and that doesn't make them depend on me. I think that's a real big advantage, even for any therapist. If your client can hold the work that you're doing better between your sessions with them, the faster the progress can be, and the more clients you can see every year, the more help we can truly be.
That is true. I believe I agree with that, because if they are constantly coming in, it's either the work that you're doing, like I said, is not sustainable long term, or even they're not doing it correctly, or even doing maintenance. Like my goal as a fascia stretch therapist is, to educate them as well into fascia and how it plays an important role. But I don't want to see them forever. I want to either heal their body or help them to that. Their lifestyle is really the change. It's not me. It's what are you doing from the time I'm, offering my service till you come back. And it makes a huge role, I believe, with, the type of, I'm excited to hear what you're going to share about how this breath work. And that's a big key, I think, that's missing in fascia is the breath, because I'm a nasal breather. Sometimes I'm a nasal breather. Sometimes I'm a mouth breather. But that's another thing I'm interested to hear, because that's something that's, I believe, a lot more people are talking about is breath work. And that's going to be the next thing in health and wellness, is how the breath helps with athletic performance, with sleep, especially. That's something with, people are going to be looking into as well with fascia. So tell me, with musical breathwork, how did that, what's the name behind it? What's the mission?
My mission is to make people mighty. And mightiness, in my opinion, is well embodied in the very tribal aspect of like shouting your clan's chant, pounding your chest in the forest and feeling like anything in the world can hear you. You're singing to the stars, you're singing to the sky. I'm here to remind people that we have the power inside of them, inside of ourselves. Like, this is all we need. We don't need another doctor. We don't need another government and religion to tell us what to do. We need to come back to the heart. We need to come back to our rhythms. And a lot of what I teach, a lot of breath work out there has different goals. A lot are focused on trauma release through DMT. It's a hyperventilation style through the mouth, and they're trying to use the breath as a drug for their own reasons. My goal, and this is because I've been a singer since I was a kid, I was classically trained at 12, so I was taught the breath very young. And I look at a lot of people and I feel for them, because when you do mouth breathe, you are depriving the frontal lobe of a subtle vibration that happens when we inhale through the nose and all of the cilia fibers move. Then we're also, when we're mouth breathing, we're bypassing the purifying, temperature regulating, and humidifying aspect of the nasal glands, and we are filling our lungs up with particles and debris. So when we learn and we restore proper breath function, so much happens within the body. Just like to cover it for short, the first thing that we do in my Mighty Breath course is we detox the lung field. Now we have to breathe a little bit hyperventilated, a little bit elevated, but we only go for 90 seconds. That's because at 2 minutes we start to stress we stress our nervous system out. So the breath rate, right? As we inhale through the nose, we are going to reactivate all of the dead cilia fibers. So everything, all of these little hairs that have been laying down, or maybe the mucus got locked over. During COVID, a lot of people have like crystallized little tissues. So the first thing we have to do is create flow inside of the entire nasal structure, which comes all the way up here to the eyebrows, all the way out here. So just getting people reestablished with the shape of air and how it moves through the skull. Then the tongue position, realizing that the nasal glands in the mouth are separated, right, by a hard palate, which is a little bone structure, and a soft palate. The soft palate, right, is to me way more important than tongue position. Most people in yoga say, put your tongue behind your teeth. That's so much of an easy cueing. It's so not the truth. The real thing we're looking for is to slow motion swallow the tongue and hold the back third of the tongue against the soft palate. That that position there creates a valve. It actually pulls down the back of the soft palate, allowing the nasal glands to drain a little bit, also
Hmm.
kind of creating more room and space around the adenoids. So the first part of our lymphatic system, right, that gets hit with the outside world is the adenoids and the tonsils. These work together in unison to keep our lung tissue safe. Now, often they are taking these out of children. When we were kids, they were taking these out of children. So most people don't, like, not most people, but there's a large percentage of people growing up without either of these two sites. So I feel like telling people often, if you wake up with that postnasal drip, that's your adenoids telling you that they're inflamed. In order to help your adenoids, we can do a few things. Gargling with warm salt water costs nothing.
Okay.
Gargling with a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, like 3%, dilute it if you need to. You can gargle with a little bit of apple cider vinegar. Anything that we can do to help keep these glands clean. Some people like to do a colloidal silver little nasal spray up the nose. I'm not super huge on fluids through the nose unless you absolutely need them. Like, I like a little diffuser with a couple essential oils in it,
Sure.
more than just shoving fluids up the nose. But really, it's the air that can wake all of these things back up. It's the air that retones the trachea. It's the air that pulls the lung tissue, the particles out of the lung tissue. So if people don't breathe deep, you can take
Hmm.
Mullen, you can nose breathe. If you don't breathe deep, the mucus that's in your lung field will not be removed. So getting people familiar with the muscles that expand the lungs and the capacity that the lungs really have to increase, it's nothing to double our lung field. It takes less than 6 weeks with people. To me, I'm way more interested in what happens when that comes back. Your digestion improves, your nervous system stays more in a parasympathetic, relaxed, healing state more often. I'm really interested in dropping people's natural breath rate. So most people are breathing 15 to 25 breaths a minute at a state of rest. My goal is to shoot for people around 4 breaths a minute. So during my fascia flow, I cue for 4 breaths a minute. That's a 7-second inhale and a 7-second exhale. It's very easy if your client knows how to breathe in a shape. Very difficult if they just expand and contract with no control of the lung pumping muscles at all. It's people say, oh my God, how do you possibly breathe that slow? And it's like, well, let me introduce you to your diaphragm and your intercostals and how they can fire slowly, like belly dancers and opera singers do, how free divers do, to sustain the breath. Now, when we do that, we also are changing the rhythmic circulation. So all the old Tibetan Sanskrit literature says for perfect health, 1 breath for 1 minute. When you start to breathe that way, you realize every breath becomes a full valve and empty. A pressure wave moving through the lymphatics, moving through the cerebral spinal fluid, moving through the blood. Everything starts to take on this mighty rhythm. So musical breathwork has to do with coming back to our life as a musical. We get to be alive. We could literally be singing and dancing and like skipping our way into work every day. But if we are feeling in pain, or if we're feeling a victim to our life, if we're feeling chaotic in our life, if we're feeling unlucky in life and we're not taking responsibility, we'll never have that experience of joy. And to me, making life musical is all about coming back into the breath and the body, because we are the instrument. And our songs are sweet and beautiful, or they are discordant and chaotic.
That's awesome. I guess when you were coming up with this, did you ever, apply, like, especially the lymphatic system? That's something like I'm slowly starting to understand the importance of how fascia and the lymphatic system really correlate together. And so for you, like, how do you explain to your clients or those in your audience, like, how fascia and with your work and how that helps with your lymphatic system? Because that's something I have to also break down for clients who don't know anything about fascia and don't know anything about lymphatic system.
I like the loofah as a presentation. In the future, I would love like a small skeleton built of one of these, and I could just cut holes in it and put little marbles where the organs go. But essentially, the lymphatic system would be like tiny little marbles, right, inside of this, and then they would be connected by tubes. And those little marbles would represent the white blood cell lymphatic sites, which is just like a little bulbous sac of fluid, right? And the lymphatic system, when the fascia is hydrated, mobile, and fluid, the lymphatic system has all of this room within the tension to pump, move, and twist. Now, let's just say you're somebody who sits 8 hours a day. You drink coffee, you become dehydrated, you lose a lot of hip mobility, right? So there is a very easy spot to pick on for most people because a lot of people sit, and it's right here around the hips, right? So inside of our pelvis right here is a ton of lymphatic sites. And if you shallow breathe, okay, so if you don't push your belly button out when you inhale naturally, it means that the diaphragm is usually locked up into this kind of state instead of moving all the way flat, that U-shaped muscle. So there's no movement that's being generated through the pelvis, because what generates movement and flow as you're in a sitting posture is your breath. So if your diaphragm is nice and full and exposed through the lumbar back, and you feel like there's a small shift in your breath through the body, you can still be sitting and pump your lymphatics. But let's just say you breathe a little shallow, you're dehydrated, you don't work on your hip mobility, and you have all of these lymphatic sites through the pelvis. Chances are those lymph sites are going to build up fluid. Now, in order to release that fluid, in my opinion, we just start from the feet. As we pull the energy and the information and the conductivity all the way down here, everything's going to move naturally from up here. So a lot of people, in my opinion, they kind of get stuck treating areas where they'll be like, oh, I'm doing the Super 8 every day. And that's awesome.
Okay.
However, you can do 5 minutes of rebounding a day. It doesn't compare at all to properly moving your diaphragm. So as much as moving our fascia around is awesome, as much as we want to do fascia flow for the lymphatics, the biggest lymphatic site in our entire body sits right beneath the diaphragm. So every time you properly move the diaphragm down, the core of your lymphatic system is ripping things through. Does that make sense? So it's both. The fascia is holding the lymphatic sites. So if there's spots where the fascia is tight or crushed, where those lymph sites are either draining or we're going to have some stagnation in that fluid, right? So we want to treat the fascia. But simultaneously, if we're just treating the fascia and the breath rate is 30 breaths a minute, there's not going to be a strong circulation of the lymphatics. So ideally, we get them to 4 breaths a minute, where it would be nice and easy for them, and we work the fascia. So that way, everything is pumping. Does that make sense?
I got it. I do have one audience question, actually, that I want to ask you. It's from Imperium Specialists, Imperium Stretch, based out of Nashville. But with your research in fascia being a bit more, I guess, coming out, who have you found inspiration in the field? And what have you done to discover more about the nature of fascia in research?
What a cool question. Honored. I really, really like Dr. Carla Stecco. I feel like all of her information is just super hopeful. Her discovery in 2018 to me changes everything in fascia that predated that discovery of the fibrocytes and how they re-elicit hyaluronic acid. Also, Coach Chong Z. I feel like Coach Chong Z's EMG studies right now are going to transform plyometrics. I'm like very excited to see what his athletes do. That I'm jazzed about. Right now, I'm working with a couple pro soccer players and hockey players that I'm excited to see what happens to their career. One is like a World Cup player that just retired, and she's young enough where I'm wondering if I'm going to rehab her to the point where she'd enter back in. So I have some of my personal studies going on. I've recently invested in a piece of technology that is working with fascia slack. So every technique has its pros and cons. Okay. So in my opinion, the real overlooked issue within a lot of the fascia release is how do you treat cuts? So after the fascia has been sliced, okay, collagen, which is fascia, grows back in kind of like caulk. Like my dad's a painter, so like CAULK. And I don't want anybody to be perverted about it. As we're bleeding out, the body fills it in with this like easy to make collagen cell. And then as the nerve tissues grow back through and refire, the body turns on the fibroblast, which takes out that scar tissue, and then it regrows the new tissue. So there's this ebb and flow as our body recovers. Now, if we are doing fascia release and we're treating the densifications, right? In my opinion, there's a heavy duty vocabulary around densifications and taking care of the ones that are creating more issues and allowing the tinier ones to kind of heal up. So like in my technique, there's a little bit of a sequence where we warm it up, we make sure that we're hydrated, and then we define which ones are the most severe. And that's like how most fascia release does it. It's like you're finding densifications, removing them. But when there's a slice, how do we tell the nerves to refire without damaging or creating inflammation? And this piece of tech, along with some old school Chinese medicine, where you're just basically creating conductive piezoelectric movement. So, just rapid stimulation of an area is like the cheapest, easiest way to do it, where you're asking the nerves to refire together. But I still feel like there's a lot to uncover in how we make fascia repair as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible, where if you're an athlete or a touring musician, you can still stay on the road. You don't have to stop and reorient and take 2 weeks off to recover. You can stay in the flow.
I'm just so curious because like there's a lot of passion behind what you're sharing and what your knowledge. But was there a specific like personal life experience that made you become so passionate about what you're doing?
I actually deal with a lot more pain than I ever expose online. I have a cervical fusion in my upper spine. I only have 5 vertebrae in my spine. So I am passionate because I've been dealing with so much pain since I was a kid, and finding my way out of pain makes me feel like I've kind of refound my youth at 34, because I was experiencing, arthritic symptoms since I was like 12 and 13. And so I always wanted to do gymnastics, and now at 34 I can do them. I do it without fear of breaking my neck, and thankfully, because I have a great coach. But refinding that spring-loaded nature that I had as a kid, and obviously being able to sing at the level and the power that I do, I think it just makes me feel mighty. And a lot of people, if they're not used to that level of excitement, I'd say that this is just me. This is my standard protocol. This is my relaxed version of myself. I'm sorry if it's a little strong.
No, don't be unapologetic. I think that's important because to me, if you're very authentic and you have a mission and a goal to share this with people, I mean, I think that's kind of, it attracts people like myself to see like, it's something that people should learn more about what you're doing. I have another question for you.
Yeah, lay it on me.
So as far as the importance and power of breath when working with the fascia, how do we as fascia and body workers help spread that awareness of the importance of breath and working with fascia?
What a cool question. I think it always depends on who's in front of you and who you're communicating with. But in the lowest end, like for the 8-year-old that's in front of me, let's just say you get 10 minutes with an 8-year-old, you may never see them again. What's the thing that you could leave an imprint with? Humming. Humming is a very natural way to get kids to re-stimulate their vagus nerve, to extend their exhales, to close their mouth and start to nasal breathe, to stimulate their frontal lobe, to create movement with the cerebral spinal fluid. Humming is also a way for you to direct a client who's talking a lot to become more internal and aware on a table, and guiding them through humming at low notes and high notes can actually bring them into more of an internal awareness of how frequency affects their skeleton. So, the skull itself is made up of multiple plates. When people have been breathing shallow for a long time and their spine is very compressed, just getting them on the table and teaching them how to breathe and if they're on their tummy, trying to have them breathe so their back rises. Because
Mhm.
every time you get the diaphragm and the lumbar to move, that's when that lymphatic site is being pressed on with the diaphragm. That's when the spine is going to open up and decompress. And that's hopefully when we're going to get the skull plates to actually open and unlock. Cerebral spinal fluid moves based on the rhythm of the breath. So every time we push down at the lumbar, that's what pulls the fluid down and then pushes the fluid back up. So weak breaths don't really move the fluids within the instrument of the body enough. So 4
Mm.
breaths a minute is a 7-second inhale, 7-second exhale. Most people don't feel the muscles that pump their lungs, so I try to divide it into a lower and an upper. So if you have an adult, this is an easy way to explain it. You want them to fill the belly. We obviously don't have lung tissue in the belly. It's prompting their diaphragm to drop out. When the belly's full, I tell them to keep the air there, inhale more and fill the upper chest. Now, when they exhale, empty the chest first while keeping the belly full, then empty the belly. This at least is an introduction to a shape. We have the majority of our lung tissue on the bottom half. The more oxygen and air we can keep in the lower half of the lung field, the more oxygen is going to be dumped into the bloodstream during that one breath, making each breath more optimal. Another way to train this on a client, if they're really, really bad at it or breathing in reverse, which is so unhealthy, is you can put, when they watch a Netflix, if they put a textbook on their tummy and then tell them to breathe and move the textbook each time. This is a passive way to strength train the diaphragm. It's an old opera technique. And honestly, you could throw up to like 100 pounds on there when you have someone train well, just so you know. The diaphragm's pretty infinite. You can make that sucker strong.
Cool. How about this? What are some common misconceptions about the role fascia plays from modern science standpoint that you know of?
Okay, well, if we just go deep, it's going to be that it's our circulating body of light.
Mhm.
You know, people still think that's woo-woo, but it's absolutely present. But most people aren't familiar with plasma. So when we talk about plasma being this, between stage of water and not quite a solid, it's almost like a honey-like, and it's also electrically charged. Most people aren't familiar with that type of thing, so it's hard to imagine. But inside of the nanotubules of the collagen is a fluid, and that fluid is what's being argued about all over the world right now. And in what I believe, based on the studies that I've seen, is it's most certainly holding an electrical charge. We're not yet measuring it, but I'm excited about that because in my opinion, this is the emitter of our magnetic field. It's the emitter of our electromagnetism in general. So the more fluid and opening, grounded and charged up it is, I think the more dynamic and magnetic we become, which is really what I wanted to call the company. I wanted to call it like electromagnetic training, but that's not a popular thing yet, so I made it more illustrative. I mean, imagine the fluid. The body itself is fluids and gases moving at a rhythm inside of a pumping circulation system. So I think people understand that we're made of liquid, but that liquid is constantly recycling itself. And how clean you keep that liquid that you keep putting in your body determines the rivers, how clean these rivers that are moving within you. So it's the lymphatic cell that's in your toe 2 days from now could be your cerebral spinal fluid in the middle of your ventricles. And people don't take responsibility for how they consume, how much sugar they're consuming. When we think about, okay, are you comfortable with this building up in the canals and the rivers of your being? I think it can reframe detoxing. I think it can reframe a lot of beauty. A lot of women are focused on beauty products that are so makeup oriented, and we could become very easily infatuated, I think, with things that purify the rivers of the body, because that's what's actually going to bring us the most beauty. You know, I love like the Essene literature around when we purify the temple of the body, you know, we become the embodiment of light, because now there's no darkness in the way. Now there's no particles in the way of emitting what's inside. And that to me is kind of the next level of humanity. That should be our generation's gift to the next generations, is making space for more of that. More of us really actually embodying spirituality. It's not just a religion. It's truly within our biology to be beings of light and to allow that light to move forward, to be flowing, to be mighty, to be bright.
Yeah, I know you did a podcast recently about how our body is, there's some there are light particles. I forgot, it was dang it, but you
Bio-
did a podcast. Yes, thank you, that's the one. And that I was like, oh, that's very interesting. I haven't thought about that. And I guess another thing that you kind of mentioned about is from the ground up. I'm a barefoot naturalist as well, and I believe it's truly like starts from the ground up. As myself playing sports, I've always had ankle injuries, knee injuries, and I look back, I'm thinking, what was I wearing during those times? I was wearing ankle braces, knee braces, but I wasn't really looking down to my feet to seeing how strong are they, how mobile can it be? And only now am I thinking, gosh, it's just down there. I wasn't really thinking about it because we're probably not taught, especially how shoes are just more of a fashion. It's not of a tool. It's not a tool. I mean, and so kind of helped me to understand why people should really look at their feet, that ground, that foundation, to see where a lot of these symptoms could be, fixed, is looking at their feet.
Yes. Yeah, the feet is kind of an unending topic. I'm sure you've experienced this now, where you stand in a gym and everybody has shoes on and you're like, wow, we have missed the point.
Yeah. Yes.
We are training only a fraction of what we actually think is important, and now I'm only barefoot at gyms that are only barefoot, and it feels good. And we're out, like now I train outside barefoot. If it's raining, we train. If it's windy, we train. And it feels like when I leave, I'm so much more charged up than I've ever been, from the fluorescent lights, from the 100 machines, from, everybody wearing shoes, breathing in recycled air. It makes me feel like we got gyms wrong. Like, even though fitness culture is 10 million times what it was 100 years ago, I feel like we still gotta tweak it a little bit. It's still not as earthing, as grounding, as recharging to our energetic structure as it can be. Even machines, those of us that train on machines, once you get past a little bit of a level, you realize, wow, there's not as much range of motion. You're training very linearly. You're just training dependencies within the system.
Yeah.
So we keep getting better,
I guess for me, closing, I love to have the audience kind of share your course that you have. I know you have a musical breathwork course that you offer online, and kind of give us a glimpse of like what, if someone is interested, what would entail, what would they be going through to work with you and whatnot. So go ahead.
Yeah. So my website's musicalbreathwork.com. I have a free breath and fascia test for everybody to just go there, learn a little bit about what that is, what it looks like, and how they could calibrate themselves. So I think that's always fun, finding out what your lung capacity is and testing your toe dexterity. From there, I actually offer 3 courses. One is called a brain and breath connection, and that's a very much an overview, a chronological sequence of how the breath, our heart rate, how the heart rate changes our brain waves, how our brain waves change our fascia tension. And I break down what I do in my 2 courses in a who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I love sharing that with people. It's my lowest cost offering. It's only $30. It's made for families. It's tons of slides and diagrams. I like to think that I've synthesized a lot of doctors and a lot of research into that, and people can watch it and really understand the stress loop, which is what I'm trying to break down in that. Is we don't have anxiety. We just have tight tension in our fascia, and we have an elevated breath rate. And by taking care of those 2, we can live in this new rhythm. We can live in a softer, more peaceful state more often and stay in a state of healing. My Mighty Breath course is hyper focused on all of the physiology of breathing, and it provides a couple different walkthroughs depending on how much time you have that day, 7 minutes or 10 minutes, as well as means to start to empower your natural breath rate. I'm very proud of that course. I offer it for $99. Most of my clients have doubled their breath rate in less than 6 weeks, to a point where my business partner is like, we should guarantee it. And I'm like, no, I don't want to guarantee it. I don't want to go through the refunds and people saying that they trained and they didn't, but it's very cool to see people be able to, in such a quick period of time, reset how they sleep, reset their breath rate, reset how often they're being able to drop into a state of healing. Sometimes when people get triggered, they're there all day. And, it's 4 minutes. If we can, for 4 minutes, hold that 4 breath a minute rate, we take it to another level. Then I have a fascia flow course. That's a 4-hour course. We do the lower body at the right time when people are ready. The upper body unlocks. And I'm available for all of my clients via email. I really welcome questions as they come up. And then I have a membership if people feel like they're going through something serious. They really want one-on-one counsel or mentorship. They want to be aware of all of the experiments I'm doing. They want to have access to all of the courses. I have a membership for $99 a month. And that allows me to just kind of love on you. I send videos to my members. I make sure that their technique is right. But in the membership, I actually have 60% more content. I release a lot of my podcasts. Our members are probably watching here right now. So I try to work with people in whatever way they best do. I do, live events. I have one coming up on Thursday. I'm heading to Texas. I'm heading to Wyoming in a couple months. I do private sessions with people all over the world. So however people best learn, I'm here for you. I just want to make this information accessible so that 100 years from now, everyone knows how to breathe. Everybody knows how to take care of their fascia. It is a rule of thumb. The next generation has complete control over their joints. Joint pain is not a thing. Chronic pain is not a thing. Early onset arthritis is not a thing. All of the chronic and debilitating diseases that come out of a shallow, poor, dysfunctional breath wave and breath sequence is out of the way. Let's move on. We have problems to tackle. We don't need a society that's stuck in these things that just need simple, holistic sequences to move us through.
Thank you so much, Brooke. I really am glad I was able to do this with you. I know we had to reschedule, and I'm glad that we have a lot of similarities, especially Coach Changji, that I had a privilege of interviewing. That we have people to mentor like yourself, because I believe as a collective, if we are to bring this knowledge of fascia, and especially the type of work that you're doing to the general public, we are able to help a lot of people with these chronic issues, symptoms that probably people aren't thinking about that could help them. So I applaud you. I thank you for your work that you're doing. And I will continue to look from afar and to cheer you on. So thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Absolutely, Ian. Thanks for making some nice conversation and coming up with some really good questions. It was a delight to be. I had to really put my thinking hat on there for those.
Awesome. And then I will put your show information in the show notes. But for those of you who are listening to the Stretch to Go podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, follow the Stretch to Go. We release new podcasts every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern. And don't forget to follow Brooke at Musical Breathwork on Instagram. And she has a lot of great content there along with her website. So thank you again. I'm looking forward to hopefully reconnecting in the future.
I'd love that.
Thank you.